Hello, I'm Katri Kolesnik, Head of Business Technology Forum. This is the fourth video of a series of interviews with business technology leaders. This year we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of Business Technology Standard, and we decided to interview some CIOs from some of the most successful private and public sector organizations and share it through Business Technology Forum. Our fourth interview is with John Butterworth, Director of the CIO office at King's College London. I met John in Helsinki, Finland, in the midst of preparations for the Business Technology Forum's 10th anniversary celebration, and as you will hear in the background, there are quite a lot of noises during our talk about business technology past, present and future. So hello John.
Hi Katri.
Glad you are here with us. Thinking about the last decade, and thinking about your professional life, what have you been doing during the past 10 years?
Well, the past nearly 8 years I've been at King's College London. Before that I was working in consultancy mainly, and in strategy, particularly in a media company. But for me, over the last 10 years, it's really about trying to help the organisation really understand what IT does for it, what the costs of IT are, and to really involve them in decisions about IT. So rather than think that IT is just about the bits and pieces in the background or putting computers on the table, actually just how much it actually helps the organisation to succeed. For us to be really a partner with them moving forward, rather than an afterthought perhaps, as sometimes some of our colleagues have had a salesman tell them about how great something is and then just say, hey, IT, could you just integrate that for us, just run it on the server, put it on the server for us? And we're thinking, that doesn't really fit in very well with the set of systems that we've already got. So we'd rather be involved with people making decisions at the front, rather than put your hands up and say, no, that we can't do that in this organisation. And we don't really want to be the people who are being seen to sort of say no too often.
So how do you see, how is this message received, and is the attitude from business?
Well, I think the attitude from business does change, but it takes time to win people's trust, really, to have that conversation, because certainly in King's College London, one of the challenges is actually a history of underinvestment in IT. And it's helping people understand that actually there's quite a lot that needs to be fixed before we move forward, because if you put new things on a foundation that's not solid, everything could sort of fall apart. The other big change really is actually helping people understand the cost of IT, because each time someone buys a new system, if you want to keep that system running, there's an ongoing maintenance cost or a license cost to pay. And before you know where you are, you can have an awful lot of license costs racking up that begin to eat into your the money that you would have available to invest in the future.
So what do you think, what helps IT to communicate things to business and vice versa? What helps business to understand better what they need to know or what they would need to change?
So one of the key things that we've been doing really is to help people think in functional or service terms. So for example, what are all systems that are involved in HR? What are the costs of the processes that run in those areas? So people can start to think about the mix of components in that service and understand how is that cost made up. And in a particular area, for example in HR, if you had 12 systems, could you just do that with 7? And if you could, why don't we get rid of those 5? So it's trying to help people both make the best use of the technology that they do have, but also to introduce more simplification.
You are the director of the CIO office at King's College. So I'm just wondering, related to agenda, who are you meeting mostly with? Is it the people from IT or people from then university business?
One of the things that we're trying to get everyone to understand within IT is that everyone has a customer. So I can't get round every part of the university, but we have people who are focusing more on the education area or the research or HR or finance or estates and facilities. And it's about bringing the right teams of people together from the IT side, which means the people who are involved in building things, the development, and the people who are involved in running it, the services, with those who have ownership, if you like, or investment in those services. So really we're encouraging connection in what we're calling the functional product groups or the service product strategy groups. So that's a place, a meeting place really, where they can come together and understand how is the service performing or looking in that particular area. Is it good? Is it healthy? What are the recurring problems? How can they improve things? What new projects do they need to run? What service improvements might they need? So that actually you can make the decisions together. So it's, if you like, business and technology working together in partnership. One of the key things we're trying to get them to do is to come up with what we're calling service product strategies. So to think about actually what are you going to need to be doing over the next 1, 2, 3 years, and that helps us to shape our overall enterprise architecture plans, but also to form the roadmap of projects. So we actually have a measure of what all the different projects are going to look like and how much they're going to cost. So you can present that as part of the annual business plans and make sure that it all kind of stacks up. Of course, supply and demand never quite balance, so there are always conversations that need to be had at a senior level in the university, because if we haven't got enough money to spend, they need to make a decision about, do we give more to education this year or is it more research? It's no good if IT make those decisions. They have to be business or university-led decisions.
So now if we think about the business technology standard and the idea of standard being that, okay, it's there, out there on the web, anybody can take it into use and start implementing it. And you are one of the first, I would say, outside of the Nordic area that we know of that have been taken the standard into use. So can you tell a story that, okay, how did you, what was the, how did you find it and what in it was that made you decide to use it?
I can't remember exactly which meeting it was, but it was one of those CIO forums where my boss, Nick Leake, happened to meet with Juha, who obviously runs Sophiegate, who were behind the creation of the business technology standard. And as Juha described what the standard was all about, he began to think, this is very similar to what we've been doing with our operating model. We call it the King's operating model. I should get John to have a conversation with Sophiegate and business technology and see how these two align and if it's worth King's adopting it. So I then spent some time with Juha in the offices going through the latest versions of the standard, comparing that with our next version of the King's operating model, which we were about to release, and at the same time ITIL 4 was coming out, so it was a three-way check, and thinking, actually we don't need to redesign all of these things for ourselves, we can actually use the BT standard and ITIL 4 together as 80-90% of the operating model, leaving us to just describe the, if you like, the bits around the edges or guidance over the top. And the good thing about that is one of my key roles for the last 8 years is to keep developing the operating model. So I don't have to redesign all of that wheel when you've made it available in the open public space, and also invited us to contribute our ideas to how that model should develop going forward. So that leaves us freer to actually concentrate on the service, on the delivery of IT for the university, which is what we're there to do after all.
Can you tell in practice how do you implement it?
It's very, very helpful that you've got it on the web and people can click through and read some of that for themselves. But you can't rely on that. What we've done is actually bring people together run a simulation workshop, and behind that actually talk about aspects of the standard. And I think one of the things that we did that was really, really helpful was then in a group setting decide as a university from the perspective of all those people in the room, where were we good, where were we not good? And we mapped all that up on the framework, and then we could see some areas which everyone kind of agreed were things that we should develop together. So it's very handy in terms of building momentum and agreement about where to go forward, and also confirming actually that, for example, in basic service management, service to the users, the service desk, that we're already pretty good and solid in that area.
What do you see as the biggest challenge in adopting the business technology standard?
Big challenges, I think, in adopting business technology are really when people have different ways of understanding things. So it's very helpful if people begin to start to use common language, and I think that's where the business technology standard, together with ITIL, helps, because you begin to get a glossary, you begin to get some common terms that avoid some of these translation difficulties or areas of misunderstanding.
Who at King's College is then, who is the stakeholder group that should know some of the BT standard?
What we're focusing on doing now is actually building awareness amongst the people that we have most interaction with, the people who are coming into the functional planning or the strategic product strategy groups, so that they can understand it, and really just to see and to learn with them who might have an opportunity to apply it. So some of our departments are wanting to develop or mature in the way in which they do service management. So as they do that, there are opportunities to begin to have these conversations. So we're looking for what we call perhaps the coalition of the willing. So you work with people who want to move forward. So we're definitely not forcing it upon people.
So now it's about roughly, you said 8 years. You've been working on this in the CIO office.
Yep.
And developing the operating model. And just thinking about your work, so what are you passionate about? And what sort of inspires you at your work?
So I think what I like to see most is when people start to come together as teams. One of the pieces of work that we invested in over the past couple of years, and we're still doing it with people, is encouraging people, if you like, to have what we call an outward mindset. So to think about who your customer is, so who's the service there for. And that's helping us to have collaboration between teams, and also collaboration between the IT team and others. So I don't say we're there yet, but I definitely see a number of improvements that have been happening. So when people are able to work together more efficiently and decide together actually what's the best way to apply a standard, because a standard is a reference point, it's not a rule book that you have to apply every time. So we're looking to see people feel equipped to refer to the standard and, if you like, select the best bits out of it that are going to work for the piece of work that they're going to need to do, and then work together.
If other universities adopted the model, do you think there would be any benefits?
Well, it's funny, in universities there's a lot of people that move from university to university. So if other people were using the model, there's familiarity already with it as a common framework. You know, the universities kind of work together to create lots and lots of different common frameworks, and this is just one area, another area where it would be useful to be able to have that understanding. Pretty much all universities, as I understand, have the challenge of making the university technology really understood, so that it actually becomes to be seen as something that the university really owns and can use, drive going forward, rather than just seeing as IT sometimes as a bit of a necessary evil. They can then see IT as something that's actually going to help them achieve their strategic goals. So for us, we have Vision 2029 at King's, And so we set out some goals about what education should look like, what research should look like, but there's no way any of that's going to happen without the technology or the IT behind it.
Okay, so what is Vision 2029?
So in 2029, King's College will be 200 years old, and the university has set a vision about what it should be, what it should look like by 2029. So that's really the vision and the mission put down in a strategic document, and pretty much all departments and faculties contributed in creating that vision. So it describes what we're going to look like in terms of education, in terms of research, and how King's as an organisation is going to be of service to society.
As King's is now one of the members of the development community, and we've been cooperating already together, I see a lot of things happening at King's and a lot of good things coming from King's College. And by that, I'd say that you are quite enthusiastic about the model. So can you tell me what in the standard is good about it?
So we're always looking for ways to do things faster and quicker, cheaper, more effectively. I think the BT standard just gives us a backdrop to help us do that. One of the things, well, a couple of the things that it really helps us with are improving what we want to do around business value, so making sure that anything that we do is actually a really meaningful improvement for the organisation. So something we'd always wanted to do, but the standard describes in that area what we could do, so that gives us a start. We'd also been wanting to describe more what we would do in terms of incremental delivery rather than what you might call the stage gate waterfall projects. So those are two areas which actually gives us a bit of an accelerator. You know, we believe in what King's is doing, and anything that actually helps us improve the way in which the technology is serving King's to help King's deliver better educational research has got to be good news.
Do you see that the standard is going to help you to rationalize sort of the value of IT for the business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because the standard is broken down into a number of different areas, we've always kept timesheets which record where we're spending our time. So we're mapping our timesheets according to these BT standard dimensions, which then allows us to say where in the BT standard is our money, our time, our effort being spent, and we can divide that also by the type of service that's being supported, whether that be HR or finance or education, research, estates and facilities, whatever, what one might call to a degree activity-based costing, but we're looking to understand what's the cost of providing the different services. We're hoping that as we begin to get a better understanding of benefits, you can also show the benefit side of the equation as well as the cost.
Nowadays we talk a lot about the work-life balance, so how do you do that? How do you balance your sort of private life and work life?
So, I mean, one of the things that I love to do is walk on the beach. So I live near the seaside in Cornwall. So after a day at the work, get home, go for a walk with my wife or with my daughters, get an hour or so just seeing the beauty of nature, and if the waves are good enough, maybe catch a few waves, surf a few waves.
Thank you.